Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Nicole Christina. She is an expert in eating disorders, particularly in middle age. She is a psychotherapist of 32 years with a specialty in eating disorders, and she's also the host of Zestful Aging podcast. Welcome to the show, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Ajay. I'm happy to be here.
You are welcome to the show, Nicole. You are welcome to India in this online format. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk about. We'll be talking about managing eating disorders, especially in the middle age, especially among women. But
Yes,
my first question to you, Nicole, is to understand you host this Zestful Aging podcast.
that's right.
And a lot of people you have they who have this zest for life. They think, when I will be middle age, especially when I will be a bit more relaxed in life, when I've earned all my money, I will be able to eat and drink the way I want to. And that's the time you are talking about eating disorders. That's not just for life. So I want to understand about then how should they look at this particular thing? Where is the zest of their zest of life? It is easy, it is difficult for them to gulp this down. Help us understand about this part of zestful aging.
And so I want to make sure I understand your question. Um, are you talking now about how to be zestful in eating, or are you talking about when people get into trouble with eating and exercise?
Both the things. The thing is that
Both.
people think that living is also a lot of people are very fond of food and they want
Yes.
to eat. And a lot of
Yes.
people think, I can eat because now I can do so. And that is the time, if there can be eating disorders. So help us understand, what is this
Why?
eating disorder happen? Is it
I
because of
see.
overeating or
I
non-eating? So
see.
help us
Okay.
first with that and then about that.
Okay. So eating disorders are a way to control anxiety. And there's a lot of anxiety around entering a new phase of our lives. There's a lot of losses around middle age, and I'm talking about 45, 50, 55 area. There's massive adjustments. And I don't know how it is in India, but many people are starting to think about maybe retirement, maybe the end of their career, maybe their children are moving or launching. Um, and maybe they're taking care of their parents who are now maybe needing more help. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of readjustment. And one of the things that happens also is our identity, right, is up for grabs because we may be a teacher, for example, and now maybe we're looking at retirement and now we're no longer a teacher or a full-time parent. Maybe our friends are retiring and moving away, and so often there's a void. It's just so much adjustment, similar to adolescence in the Western world. I don't want to make assumptions about Asia, but so there's so many things that are different and changing, and the structures are no longer there. If we considered ourselves a full-time parent, a full-time worker, all of these things are really changing. And so what happens is, and in our world too, there's a lot of things happening that are unsettling, we'll say. And so a really handy way, or a really effective way, I'm not saying healthy, but effective way of organizing our world is to making it very small and measurable. And so that means maybe I will not eat any white flour anymore. I will not eat any white sugar, and I will start measuring my protein, measuring my carbs. It gives me this feeling of control and safety, and it's some structure. And it's a like a it's sort of a cozy little world that we're building because the real world outside feels so chaotic. And also now we're starting to look at our mortality, and many of us don't know how to talk about perhaps our feelings about getting closer to mortality. Once our parents are gone, we're the next ones up, right? And so we know now that there is an end. And many of us don't have structures or systems for thinking about death. So there's many, many pressures that we may not have tools for. So there's this loss, there's change, there's adjustment. Our children at the same time, especially if we have daughters, are in their absolute prime, thriving, beautiful selves as our bodies are clearly changing. You can have all the plastic surgery you want. We still have the signs of age. You can't really take that away. So there's grief, there's and then there's this reinforcement, right? So if I start losing weight, if I start going to the gym, all of a sudden people say, "Oh my goodness, you look so great. How can I do this too?" And it makes you want to do more. So it's reinforcing. The other thing that happens in possibly is this is a high time for a divorce. So there's something called the gray divorce you might have heard of, where people the children are gone and now they look at each other and say, what do we have to talk about? Not so much, right? We may have different ideas about what makes a good retirement. Maybe if you're married or partnered, and your spouse wants to sit and watch documentaries or History Channel, and you want to go travel and walk the Camino, those are two very different ideas about how you want to spend your age. So there's also some unsettling period and kind of readjustment then. And so what happens is, nobody wakes up and says, I want to have an eating disorder. That's a great plan. But what happens is we start using these behaviors, this maybe over exercise, maybe restricting eating, and then all of a sudden we're no longer in control anymore, and then the eating disorder is in control of us, and now we're saying I can't go to the beach because I don't want to show my body. I can't go to lunch with my friends because the food is, I don't know if it's fried in coconut oil or vegetable oil, and I can't eat this, I can't eat that. So the life starts becoming very, very small. And if we take this further out, it's quite dangerous to be restricting our food and over exercising because our heart is a muscle and does not like to be starved. So there's real implications of doing these behaviors.
Right, right, Nicole. So, how should we understand eating disorders? Is it about more food? Is it about less food? Is it about anxiety? Is it about middle age? What is the connection here, and how are there any myths related to eating disorder? Even I may not, I don't have any great idea about eating disorder. Maybe in my perception, it is eating more, and
Not yeah, there's very many
therefore,
kinds, right? There's different
right.
versions. So
So, please,
sometimes if
yeah.
we have anxiety, we might eat more. And so more, that's a binging kind of thing. Like it feels good to eat. We're designed to have taste buds and eat delicious food, and it helps our anxiety. So just chemically. So if I have a terrible day at work and I'm worried about my parents, I'm worried about all of these age related things, all of a sudden I say, oh, there's a quart of ice cream in my freezer. Let me sit down and eat the whole thing. It's kind of a way to buffer some of the experience, buffer some of the feelings. So in that example, it's eating more. Uh, and that helps anxiety. Another way that people do this is to restrict food. So to have less food also helps anxiety in a different way, because now I'm feeling better that I only ate 700 calories and it was only vegetables and no fats and no carbs. And you have your own little system of feeling better about yourself, your body, and your life. So there's many versions, some with more food, some with less food, and some with food plus too much exercise, plus vomiting, plus diuretics. There's a lot of different ways to have an eating disorder.
Okay, thank. That's indeed an education for people like me, at least, because I had no idea about all these things, and I never
Sure.
Googled it till now. So I thought, why not ask you, so that a lot of people through this podcast can know it the way people in the medical world look at it. So now,
Yeah,
how do I know? Right? How does one simple person know whether they are uh, they are having any sort of a disorder?
that's a good question. So oftentimes the person themselves doesn't really want to believe this because it's working. So if I'm using food to help me, I don't want somebody to say to me, hey, maybe there's a problem, because that's the way I help myself and feel better. And I don't have any other ways right now, for example. So it's very difficult to say to somebody, hey, I'm noticing you're not eating very much, or you're losing a lot of weight, or you won't go out to lunch with us anymore, all of these things, because that person wants to keep that. It's like a tool that they have to help them feel better. But and so they're not likely to say, hey, I might have some trouble. When they do start coming out and going to clinicians, is maybe their family says, hey, I just went grocery shopping and now all of the groceries are gone. I just bought a gallon of ice cream this morning, it's gone. And so you might get some pushback there. It's very unlikely that a person is going to say, hey, I think I have an eating disorder. It does happen, but it's very difficult to accept. But what they would notice is people are saying, why don't you come to our house anymore for dinner? Why can't we meet you anymore for lunch? Why are you at the gym all day long? Why can't you host Thanksgiving in the US or Canada? So it starts to really interfere with one's life. And that's the sign that something is wrong.
Okay, okay. And what is the relationship between eating disorders and middle-aged then women? Even
Right.
younger, young women, we keep on getting stories about eating less, and that leads
Yes.
to eating disorder. Tell us about this part, even, especially in the middle age for women.
Well, this is what I was mentioning before, that it's such a period of great transition and loss and adjustment and confusion. Many women experience body changes around menopause that they don't like. They might feel out of control in different ways, mentally, also with their body. And it's a way of making your world manageable, because now I'm not concentrating on aging, my body changing, my kids are leaving, my job maybe wrapping up. I'm only concentrating on how many avocados I can eat, or how many, that I only eat this kind of grain, or that I don't eat this kind of fat. So it makes our world, all I can say is just so, it's a I'm trying to think of a good word. It's like when you need to exit from life, this is sort of a way to keep your world feeling calmer and more manageable when so many big things are changing and they are difficult. We don't, as a culture, we don't really talk that much about what's it like when your child leaves and you go by their bedroom and all you can do is cry because you miss them so much. Or now I'm really not a full-time mother, but I've spent so much time being a parent, I don't know who I am anymore. It's something to cling on to that feels safe.
Right, right, Nicole. So, what's the solution? How can people be practical about this change in life? This is life, and the fact of life is, Nicole, if I look at it, is that the old must give way to the new. The leaves fall, new leaves come, and that's the way life goes.
So you
And that's
have
a
a deep
practical.
acceptance. Yeah.
No, but this is what nature tells us.
That's what
This is
nature
how
tells us.
ancestors tell us that they were the present one upon a time, and then they became ancestors.
Your
And so is the
culture
way.
is your culture is better than our culture at talking about aging. Because here ancestors mean very little. Ancestors have wrinkles. Ancestors, you know, uh, are not cool. And I think that if you have a culture that uh, has a respect for ancestors and feels like there's wisdom, that's a very different scenario than the Western culture, which is you get thrown away. You're too old. There's no room for you now. You're invisible. So if you're telling me ancestors have value, you're going to have less problems aging, right? But here it's like you have wrinkles, bye bye. That's why there's so much plastic surgery to try to erase that. But in terms of how do we solve this problem, we have to look at what you're getting. What's the benefit? And if you say to somebody, what is working? How is this helping? And they say, I feel calmer. I feel less scared. I feel more focused. Then I can say, let's find out some ways to help you do that and feel that way that are not hurting your body. What else is going to help you feel value? What else is going to help you feel calm? And let's talk about mortality. Let's talk about aging. And community, of course, is very important. There's a lot of podcasts, not only mine, but there's a lot of podcasts talking about aging in a Western society where literally you're no longer useful once you're, I mean, we know this in Hollywood. There's been a lot of talk about how come older women don't get roles anymore because they don't look the same. So we need to talk about what's happening. Why is this helping? And how can we address these difficulties and pains and challenges in ways that are not destructive and hurtful? And that's what therapists do. That's what I would start with is what is causing you the pain, and let's figure out how we can help you make your life feel more uh let's see, Trying to think of besides the word meaningful, but a life you want to live, that you get out in the morning and there are things for you that light you up. Maybe that's walking your dog. Maybe that's going and gardening. Maybe that's traveling. I would love to go to India. That's one of my bucket lists. What makes you happy besides counting calories? And so that's generally what we're aiming for.
Right, right. There is much to look at life. You see, I am not a computer expert. A lot of people in India is known for information technology, but a lot of people in India are not computer experts.
Okay.
But if you ask, a common thing about computers is, if your computer is having problems, laptop is having problems, a simple person might, like me, would say, why don't you reboot it, restart it? And
Ah,
many a times the computer is solved, all your softwares get integrated, they all come back in proper shape, and it starts working. Many a times we have to do that in life. You did it. You started your podcast. Now you have got more than 300 podcasts. Your
yes.
episodes you have done. You have done.
Uh,
Now you teach people about interviewing. Is
yeah.
that one of the solutions that people should look at? Resetting, rebooting the basics, and
That's an
everything
in
will be get.
It's an interesting metaphor, Jay. I hadn't thought of the rebooting, but it is a rebooting because the old stuff doesn't work anymore. And I was a therapist for many years, and I said, what else is fun for me? And I thought, I want to interview really interesting people all over the world that are going to have conversations that stimulate me and that other people will learn from. And so 6 years ago, I started Zestful Aging. And as it is so fun to talk to people from around the world. And then you learn things and it's stimulating, it's new, it's fresh. That's it. That's perfect. How can you reboot in a way now to reflect who you are now, right? When I was 30 years ago, just starting, I wouldn't have the same confidence. I would already be concentrating on my therapy practice or being a woman who was 30. It's very different. And now I have more time. And I want to use that time to be stimulating and fun and interesting and new and delightful. And that's right. That's a reboot.
Right. And also about perspective. So I guess it's less about east and west. And it's, I think, looking at things, learning the best of things from different places. And that's what, like you did it. It's all about perspective. You did for yourself, Nicole. And now you see, we are talking. You talk to so many people. You talk to writers, advocates, filmmakers, musicians, scientists, athletes. What more do you want? So it's about perspective. Let me show you some, discuss you like this, talk like this. When we had Hubble's telescope, it brought a different perspective of the universe.
Yes.
When the Webb telescope came in, it is bringing much more deeper perspective of the universe. Such
Yeah.
is life. We change a bit of our uh, perspective, our lenses, the way we see it, and the whole universe changes for us. Is
That's
that the
quite
solution we
beautiful.
should look at it?
I think that is beautiful. I would also say, as a therapist, there are things that are hard and
I
painful.
know.
We may lose things that are dear to us. We may have health challenges. So I think perspective is a huge part, but also we have to learn to have the pain and the beauty side by side. That I don't like having foot pain when I'm hiking, but I still can go out and enjoy nature. So you're always walking this line of there are losses. Let's not pretend that it's all, hey, doesn't matter. Your age
Right.
doesn't matter. It sure matters when my feet start getting sore when I'm walking and training, right? However, the other piece is, and the perspective is, I get to go out on these beautiful trails in the sun and look at the trees and be out and hear the birds. That is beautiful. That's a beautiful life. And when I come home, I better stretch because I know my feet are going to hurt. So I think it's you're just riding a bit of a wave or walking a line where you have both things that you're navigating. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. So those people who are having real pain
Yeah.
and those people who are not having that pain, they should not create that pain for themselves. Real pain has to be dealt in the real way. And those people who do not have pain, they can do with perhaps a little bit of perspective, like you have done.
Mhm.
Everyone has seen life, and there are so many ways to look at. But for those people who have this real pain, how should they tackle this thing in terms of eating disorders, in terms of taking care of those things, and
Right.
looking at life much more with hope, and much more of things that they can look at it with much more uh, things that they have yet to see.
Well, there's nothing like talking to other people who have similar pain, right? That is very healing and therapeutic. There's a ton of podcasts now who that address eating disorders and diet mentality. That I always have to be on a diet, and I'm on this diet, that diet, and how it's limiting us and hurting us. So it's beautiful that podcasts address that. Mine isn't primarily about eating disorders, but there are beautiful books. One is called Intuitive Eating. There's another one I love called Body Kindness. The information is out there, and talking about it is the best way to hear others, and the shame about it evaporates when you say, hey, all I want to think about is my diet today. I don't want to think about the fact that my kid's having problems as an adult, or my job is downsizing, or my partner is too boring, or something like this. So, in order to heal in the way I understand it, we really need to talk about it and think about it with others who are having similar problems.
Right, right. There is much to learn about life, about eating disorders, managing eating disorders, about managing midlife, and
Managing
also about
life. I mean, I think
and manage.
I think that's a good way to think about it. It's managing eating disorders, but really when we look at the root, it's managing midlife, and how do we do it in a way that is positive and brings us vibrance, rather than detracts from us and takes away. And it's a challenge, for sure, and there are better ways to address it than not eating and hurting ourselves.
I'm sure there is so much to learn, from you, not in terms of only your knowledge, but also in terms of your podcast. So, for those people who would want to know more about you, more about your podcast, how they can know more about eating disorders, what is the best way for them to connect with you, Nicole?
They can go on to zestfulaging.com. That's all the stuff with my uh, podcast. My other, if they want to look more at the clinical, it's NicoleChristina.com. I do some clinical work in a telehealth way, but really, the zestful aging, I think, is a good way to look at how do we age in a way that is really satisfying. And so that also encompasses being fully ourselves and not focusing on weight and diet.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for
It
joining
was a,
us.
it was a pleasure, Jay. Thanks for having me.